Love finances, the other F word, and want to support the show? Become a patron by going to patreon.com/FTOFW. You'll get special features, a shout out on the air, and early releases. Or if you prefer, pick up some merchandise at financestheotherfword.com.
As fantastic a CFP as Mel O is, and as wonderful an attorney as I am, please do note that anything said in our show are our opinions alone and are not meant to be taken as financial or legal advice.
Welcome to Finances, the Other F Word, a Gen Xer podcast for musicians and music lovers, where we discuss money and music without all the pretentious bullshit. Here are your hosts, Zoe Terry, attorney at large, and Mel O, certified financial planner and author of Finances, the Other F Word. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Finances, the Other F Word. And today on the show, we're going to talk about the Karen epidemic. And there's a lot more to it than you might think. And before we get into it, though, we need to welcome some new countries.
Yes, we have new countries to welcome to the fold, which include Greece, Cyprus, and Slovakia.
Ooh, that's awesome. That's it. Even though I know it doesn't sound like I'm excited because it's very early in the morning, we're both immensely excited and welcome for coming on board. So we're going to go ahead and get into this real quick because we got a lot of ground to cover and not so much time. So I'm going to start going at a clip. I want to give a quick disclaimer. If you're a white person, prepared to be uncomfortable. If you're a man, prepare to be uncomfortable. And if you're a reposter or a creator of Karen memes, prepare to be uncomfortable because we're going to be covering a lot of stuff that's in the heart of these Karen memes. So obviously everybody knows about the Karen memes. Everybody knows what a Karen is, but I wanted to dive a little bit further into it. So I looked up the Urban Dictionary's definition of Karen, and all the resources of all of the things that I pulled are all in the show notes. So you can go click on those and read them for yourself. So Urban Dictionary's definition of a Karen is a middle-aged woman, typically blonde, makes solutions to others' problems, causes an inconvenience, and she isn't remotely affected by any of it. So some of the quotes that they have here is like, Karen sues the local city council after they installed a new stop sign that hides the sun from her window for 2 minutes a day, et cetera, et cetera. Karen refuses to wear a face mask for the 5-minute trip to the supermarket during a pandemic, and she harasses the workers and asks to speak to the manager and threatens to sue, et cetera, et cetera. You guys get the deal. You know who a Karen is. But what I thought was really, really cool was that Urban Dictionary also had the definition of a Zoe.
What the fuck?
Yes.
What was that?
And it's pretty spot on. So this is according to Urban Dictionary's definition.
How do they spell it, first of all?
Well, they have the Z-O and the E, but then they have the little dot.
Now? Yeah,
Yes.
then it doesn't count.
Well,
So,
actually,
okay.
You might want to claim it.
All right, I'll hear it first.
Yeah, you might want to claim it. So it says, according to Urban Dictionary, when you meet a Zoe, they usually come off as shy at first, but then as you get to know them, you can find out how weird, fiery, and wild they can be. Many Zoes are very motherly or caring, but aren't afraid to beat someone's ass if they need to. Zoes are creative and have a great sense of humor. They're very passionate and have an awesome taste in music. But be warned, even though Zoes tend to like their friends, no matter how many or little of them they may have, they will roast you if needed or blow you off if they find a great new show on Netflix that they need to catch up on. And the example they gave was, friend, Zoe, do you want to hang out? Zoe, can't, I'm busy, as she scrolls through cat videos.
Oh my God, it could have been written for me. So, okay. I'll scratch out the umlaut over the E because it's a Greek name and it doesn't have the umlauts over the E, but still, I'll take it.
Yeah, for Urban Dictionary, that was pretty mild and pretty what is it when you're
Spot on.
complimentary?
It's spot on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it have one for Mel?
It didn't. I looked.
Oh,
I looked,
okay.
I was going to do us both. Yeah, but it didn't. So let's get into this really quick. So white privilege, we've talked a little bit about white privilege on the economics of discrimination episode. And in 1988, Peggy McIntosh wrote about white privilege in a paper titled White Privilege and Male Privilege, a personal account of coming to see correspondence through work in women's studies. And she listed 46 examples of white privilege, but I'm only going to go through a few of them. And these are some of her examples, so you guys can kind of understand what white privilege is. When I am told about our national heritage or about our civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is. I can be sure that my children will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence of their race. I can turn on the television or open the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented. I can swear or dress in secondhand clothes or not answer letters. Again, remember, this is 1989, without having people attribute these choices to to my bad morals or the poverty or the illiteracy of my race. And the last one is, I can be pretty sure that if I ask to talk to the person in charge, I will be facing a person of my own race. So those are some examples of white privilege. Let's talk a little bit about the history of the Karen. Okay, we're going to cover a couple court cases that you guys are probably very familiar with. Let's start with one of the most devastating ones, Emmett Till. So in August 1955, a lot of you guys have heard about Emmett, and if you haven't, it's going to remind you right now. In August 1955, Carolyn Bryant Donham was 21 years old, and Carolyn accused Emmett of whistling at her. Then later in court, she said he grabbed her. And then later in court, she said that she was insulted by him and that he had told her, quote, that he had been with white women before. And so what we find is that we find decades later, Carolyn had said that she had made all of this up and couldn't really remember what happened. But the long story short of this was that when this accusation was made, Emmett Till was murdered by Roy Bryant, who was Carolyn Bryant's husband, and his half brother. And he was beaten and mutilated, was later found a couple days later in a ditch. And his mother, Emmett's mother, insisted on an open casket surgery so all the newspapers could see what they had done to her son. And onlookers, open casket, and he was 14 years old. Now, Roy Bryant and his half brother were put on trial for the murder, but of course were acquitted thanks to an all-white, all-male jury. Now, it was later discovered, and this is going to come back to the dichotomy of the Karen. It was later discovered that Roy Bryant, Carolyn's husband, was very abusive to her and had actually coerced her to tell the story and lay the false accusations. And this is where we see why the Karen memes hit us so weird at some fundamental part, because as white women, we are both the oppressed and the oppressor. Now, as we start getting into the history of the white woman privilege in the United States, Zoe is excluded from this because of the simple fact that this history is American history. And when you look just a little bit that I did into the British history of racism, while there is still racism, it's nothing on the level that we have in our history for the United States. So again, so Emmett Till, 14 years old, he was murdered, and we see the Karen or Carolyn in this instance being both the oppressed and the oppressor. Now, there's more recent cases, of course, where you have the Central Park jogger case in 1989, which was the Central Park Five, and these were the 5 kids that were a mix of Blacks and Latinos who were wrongly convicted of raping a woman. Mm-hmm. And I believe that I witnessed them, put them all in jail. They served anywhere between 6 to 13 years, and DNA evidence finally proved that they were innocent. Now, this came at a time where we had heightened racial relationships, specifically in that area. So it was not a very, very good place to be. Now, up until 1972, the punishment for rape in many states was death. From 1932 to 1972, 455 men were executed for rape in this country. 405 of them, or 89% of them, were Black men for rape. Now, this is going to become very, very important when we're talking about a little bit of the history of a Karen. During the suffrage movement, white women were pissed that black men might get the right to vote over them first, which did happen. In 1870, it was deemed that race could not be used to disallow people to vote. Now, that doesn't mean that black men could freely go to the polls, of course, because we had Jim Crow, and then there was a whole bunch of voting tax and literacy tests and a whole bunch of extra bullshit. But in 1870, race was deemed that you can't use it to disqualify people. Well, of course, the women, specifically white women, were very, very pissed off about this. And white women did not get the right to vote until 1920. So a good deal of time afterwards. However, Susan B. Anthony, who is, has a Susan B. Anthony coin, and she's dubbed as an American hero, was quoted as saying in 1869, quote, "If intelligence, justice, and morality are to have precedence in the government, let the question of woman be brought up first and that of the Negro last." And her quote came in response to Frederick Douglass, who basically said that Black male disenfranchisement was more urgent than women's right to vote. So now let's talk a little bit about white women in slavery during slavery times. And all of this leads up to the Karen thing that we're starting to see. White women didn't have a lot of power within the household as far as in comparison to their husband. However, white women had control over slaves and Black men and Black women and their kids, everybody who was in servitude to them. And they were the ones who were primarily home. And there was a lot of the physical relationships between Black men and white women were forbidden. Now, if this was to be discovered that this happened, it would be punishable by imprisonment or death for the Black man and banishment at worst for the white woman. Now, remember that the white women were in control of the Black men and the Black women and the Black children, the slaves, under their control. And so what we see is we see examples throughout history of white women forcing themselves on the husbands of Black women, on their Black male slaves, oftentimes to get revenge because their white husband had raped the Black female slave and sired children. And so what we see is we see that the white woman would go and then force themselves on the Black male slaves. And then as a way to get revenge on them, they would often try to sell off the mixed children that were birthed. Or, of course, ultimately, the Black man would end up being hung or murdered in a much worse way. Now, there's a really great, so we've talked about Public Enemy on the show before. Their song Can't Trust It. There's a link in the show notes. You guys can go and watch it. It talks about, it's showing Black people historically in slave time, and then Black people historically in, I think this came out in like 89 or 90 in that time frame. Well, one of the things that they talk about in that video, or one of the things they show, is that there was a Black female slave who was raped by multiple white men. And then later we see that she has, that there is another Black male slave and they've gotten together and she's pregnant and, he's very happy and he's excited about the baby and he's talking to the baby. And then the lady gives birth and the baby is white. And the white man comes up to the Black man in the video and slaps him on the shoulder and like, something to the effect of, haha, better luck next time. And then, of course, the Black man attacks the white man. And at the end of the video, we see him hanging from a tree. Mm. It's really powerful. And there's other things in there, too, that are mixed with more modern times. But, Public Enemy was so ahead of their time. And so you guys got to watch the Can't Trust It video. It'll make you so uncomfortable if you're a white person, and it's a great song and a great fucking video. So let's talk a little bit about the mythology of the white woman. And this is where we start seeing, and I am a white woman, surprise, for those of you who don't know. And Zoe is a British white woman. So let's talk a little bit about how the mythology of the white woman came about, which led to what we're seeing now in the whole Karen memes. And I love researching this stuff, you guys, because I go in there with a certain set of beliefs, like this is how it's going to be. And then by the time I end it, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So all the resources are in there. If you guys are, even remotely interested in this topic, read through some of these articles. They're fucking nuts, you guys. So we see the belief in Black peril on the rise. And this was, during slavery times and promptly after when, basically slaves were freed. But of course, we know that they had indentured servitude and they weren't able to actually be free. And we see Black peril is what it was called. And it was where the belief that Black men were more sexually attracted to white women. And on top of that, they were also sexual deviants and predators. And so in this way, there became this thing, I don't know what to say, where the white women had to be protected, and they had to be protected specifically from Black men. Now, white women were looked at on, as most women are, as the mother and the keeper of motherhood and the keeper of the house and basically the nurturer of the family. But on top of that, you have the added white privilege. And then you have the image of this hypersexualized Black man who's a sexual deviant, who is basically trying to attack the purity of the white woman. And so what happens is that we have white women who are both having white privilege and at the same time needing to be protected, but still having to function in a sexist culture that is the United States. And so when we talked about the voting rights earlier, we talked about 1870, where race was eliminated, but women didn't get the right to vote until 1920. And what we see coming out of this is we see that white women, historically, some white women, not all white women, accused Black men of raping them to get themselves out of compromising positions. So basically they passed the buck, but they did it in a very, very deadly way. And when we see the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, we see that there is a lot of their belief system is built around protecting the purity of the white race, but protecting the purity of white women specifically. And a lot of times it's used as a call to action to be very violent towards Black men. And so we have the sexism, but we have the white women being able to accuse Black men of rape with basically no fair trial at all. And we've seen when I just talked to you about the statistics earlier about how many people were killed because of accused rape, 89% of them were Black people, or Black men in specific. And so what we see is we see that the protecting of the white woman becomes an overarching theme, like I mentioned in the Klan, but also in the movie Birth of a Nation from 1915, which we talked about in the Economics of Discrimination episode. This was shown at the White House, and it was white men in blackface, and it was, white women and white men being white men that were basically just like what you think of it's going to talk about. That's exactly what it talked about. And that movie is credited as rebirthing the Klan. Now, but what a lot of you guys might not know is that a lot of white women-backed organizations started to, immediately after the Civil War, started to reshape the narrative. So we talked about in the conspiracy theory episode how in World War I, when Germany was defeated, there was anti-Semites who came out and said, oh, we didn't really lose World War I. The reason why we lost it is because the Jews ratted us out, even though German Jews died right next to Germans in World War I. And so then we see Hitler come in and he starts taking that narrative and he starts massaging it. And then we have, the things that led to the dreadfulness of the Holocaust. The same thing happened in the United States, in the fact that as soon as the Civil War was done, we see white women start coming in and they start forming organizations and they start saying, well, we didn't really get defeated. right? It was because of this or it was because of that. And then what we see is we see that these white women organizations were the main pushers and lobbyists and fundraisers for all of these Confederate monuments that we had just a couple years ago, a whole big stink about, like the Robert E. Lee statues and things like that. So heroes of the Confederacy, most of those monuments were pushed and structured, put up by white women organizations.
Mm.
And right, I did not
know that.
I did not know that. There's so much more in here, you guys. It gets so much crazier. White women had their own Ku Klux Klan. I did not know this.
What? Me neither.
Yes. It was, instead of the KKK, it was the WKKK, the Women's Ku Klux Klan. That's such a lot in your mouth. Was founded in 1920, and it was joined by 500,000 white women. And these were not poor whites. These were not poor, uneducated whites. These were mostly middle-class white women. Now, I put a link in the show notes to, everybody should be very familiar with the Brown versus Board of Education court case from 1954, which basically integrated the schools. And then we had the Little Rock Nine, who had to be the first ones to go into an all-white school. And there's a whole bunch of, they got spat at, they got, called all kinds of racial slurs while they were just trying to go to school. And if you look in those pictures, white women are the ones screaming at these kids as they're trying to go into the school because their men were at work. So white middle-class women are home. They start integrating the schools. And so if you look at the very famous picture of Hazel Bryan screaming at the 15-year-old Elizabeth Eckerd from September 4th of 1957, you'll see her screaming at this 15-year-old girl trying to go to school, and flanking her on all sides, white women. I had no idea, you guys. I thought that white men, KKK, white men were the perpetrators of most of the racist and racism things that happened in the United States. And when you look at the history of it, that's just not always the case. And yes, maybe the white men were the purveyors of most of the violence, but the white women had a much, much bigger hand in perpetuating and continuing the racist beliefs. And remember that if the white women were home with the kids. So if you're a white woman home with the kids, then you're instilling in your kids every day your beliefs, whether it's a food you like or a drink you like or how much you love England, right? But if you're a racist bitch, then you're instilling that in your children every single day, and you're perpetuating that way of thinking. So let's talk real quickly about what a Karen is. The reason why Karens trigger us so much, regardless of what side you're on, is because she is both the oppressed and the oppressor. And so she deals with sexism in our culture, but she also has white privilege. So a lot of times what you find that with the white privilege, and we're going to talk about this here in a second, is that if a white woman is complaining, it's kind of like, well, you're white and you have white privilege, so what can you possibly be complaining about? And there's no doubt that a woman of color is going to experience way more sexism coupled with probable racism than, say, a white woman will. Now, obviously, Karen wants to speak to the manager. Okay. But when she wants to speak to the manager, it's perceived as she's lying or manipulating the truth to ultimately get her way, but not only to get her way, but to ultimately get someone else in trouble. Karen falsely accuses a person of color of a criminal act. And even when it's proved that there is no criminal act occurring, she can walk away with no ramifications. So we had the lady that got mad because I think a Latino gentleman was writing Black Lives Matter on his own property, on his own wall, and he was writing it in chalk. The white lady comes up, says she's going to call the cops on him. He says this is his house and he lives here. She tells him that's not true because I know the people who live there. The cops get there. They recognize that, I believe it was a Latino gentleman. They recognize him as the person he is and the real person who lives in the house. And then the white woman walks scot-free. Now, of course, with the sensation of everything going viral, she didn't walk away scot-free, right? She had a business that got hindered because we had, internet sleuths that got on it, and they exposed her. They exposed her name. Her husband, I believe, if I'm not confusing this, her husband got let go from his firm. And so there was ramifications, but legal criminal ramifications for her falsely accusing somebody, calling the cops. There was no ramifications, and she walked from it. Okay. And let's get political for just a second. Okay. When there's more recent examples where we're seeing the situation with white women privilege. Think back to the Capitol riots attacks from January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
White women, white men, right? Now, there is a white woman who I think they tried to put her in a 30-day incarceration because of the awful things that she had said. And she told people to bring guns. And I don't know if that ever happened or not. 30-day incarceration. There was another white woman that ended up getting probation. And I think that one of the reasons why she got probation is because I think she admitted it right away. Well, yeah, bitch, you had to admit it because there's fucking photos, because your stupid fucking ass, A, put it on social media, B, you're a cunt to put it on anything and be there in the first place. But that's just a real live example. So go back and look at the photos from the the January 6th Capitol riots, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And COVID, as the final thing of the Karen, we see Karens blatantly ignoring or being recorded ignoring mask mandates or doing a variety of other heinous acts, attacking, being rude to employees of companies, and a whole bunch of other situations, and just being overall dicks. So now let's talk about the opposing view to the Karens. And this I didn't expect, but I'm not saying one side is right or wrong, but what I'm saying is that there's good points on both sides. And this is why you need to listen to this show. This is why you need to tell your friends about this show, not because it's self-serving, but because we do a lot of research, you guys, and there's shit in this show that makes you fucking think. And I uncover it all the time as I'm researching, and this is amazing. So there is an opposing argument that Karen memes and Karen has nothing to do with racism and has everything to do with misogyny. Now, so when you see a video of a Karen, okay, you have no idea what's happened before or what happens after. You just see her in the height of the moment in a 1 to 3 minute clip of her not at her best, right? And of course, we love for things to go viral, and we love to hate on people. Like, literally, the United States is a nation of haters. And so by the time this video has had 1 million views, the story has gotten so distorted. And I'm not saying that every Karen video isn't from a legit place, but just think of the last time you had a fight with your spouse or your significant other. And imagine that somebody recorded a 1 to 3 minute clip of that and then posted that for the world to see. They didn't see what your spouse said. They didn't see the crazy shit that he or she said right before you said the crazy shit that you said. And so the thing is that you can take this and you can get it distorted very, very easily, because there's not enough time within a 1 to 3 minute clip, depending on the platform you are, to show you the actual justification of both sides. And in the end, everybody wants to have a video that goes viral. And so it makes it very hard to have a differing opinion to the narrative. And one of the things is that if you see a video like that and then you pose an opposite view, like, oh, maybe, such and such happened. Well, then what happens is that then they can just add stuff to the narrative, just like on a conspiracy theory, where when somebody if somebody offers a different viewpoint of what's going on, they can just add other stuff to it, and then they can nullify whatever it is that the other opinion was. And again, because white women are both oppressed and the oppressor, the meme can be taken to whatever side your beliefs are on. And so the Karen memes, as far back as they can track, actually has roots in sexism. So the farthest back they can go is December 2017, when a Redditor created a subreddit called Fuck You Karen. And Fuck You Karen was him chronicling his relationship with his ex-wife, who happened to be named Karen. And in this Reddit thread, it's all sexist, the woman just being, this, that, and the other thing. And that's the root of where all of it is. So now for my women listeners out there, how many times have you been called bossy or nasty when you've just been sticking up for yourselves? And if you were given the same situation, if a man was given the same situation and he stood up for himself, would we not look at him as being like a defender, like he's defending himself, like he's strong because he's doing it? Even if he's being an asshole and you say that guy's being an asshole, it doesn't have the same sting as calling a woman in the exact same situation nasty or bossy. It's not the same sting. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, think about the debates between Trump and Clinton when he said she was a nasty woman. When you think about a nasty man, you might think about a pervert or just somebody who's just mean. But when you think of a nasty woman, there's all kind of other connotations that come up to that. And this is where we start getting into the sexist roots of the Karen, or the alternative men would be called a kin, which I have seen no kin memes at all. Did not even know kin actually existed.
Me neither.
And yeah, exactly. And this is where we start seeing that the Karen can easily be disguised as misogynistic or sexism with the cloak of, oh, this lady is being, a racist bitch, or she's being a Karen, even if there's not specifically racism, even though that seems to run through most of them. And so for women listeners, again, how many times have you been told a sexist joke from male coworkers and you didn't laugh and you were told that you needed to lighten up? Or I've heard you don't have a sense of humor, or, oh, Mel, it's just a joke. Well, I will give you a personal example right now that's not in my notes that I'm just going to tell you guys. I remember with my previous boss at my old firm, sitting at a table where I was the only female and I was the only female advisor. And there was a t-shirt that was won from a raffle. My boss at the time, who's passed away now, I should probably not sound so schadenfreude with that, but it was a nasty court case. The shirt was too small for him. And so he tossed it to me and I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do with the bear shirt. I was like, I guess I could wear it as a nightshirt. And he said in front of my male coworkers, in front of my male clients, yeah, well, when you do that, make sure you send us a picture, Mel. And everybody laughed. And I'm at the table like,
Nice.
yeah, I'm at the table like, what the fuck did you just say to me? But I can't say that because not only is it in front of my male clients who laughed, it's also in front of his male clients who laughed, and it's in front of my fucking boss. So this is where, again, the Karen thing starts to become sexist, and the Karen flips from being the oppressor to the oppressed. Now, like I said, for my women out there, I know you guys have tons of stories. And if you want to shoot us DMs, we would love to do a whole episode on the things that you've experienced. Because I know that Zoe's in a very male dominated field. I'm in a very male dominated field, and we've experienced it over and over and over again. And sometimes the Karen meme can be based in ageism because of the simple fact that the name Karen peaked for usage in the United States in 1960s. And so when you're thinking about a Karen, that's the people you're thinking of that age. So let me give you two examples, and then I'm going to kick this over to Zoe of Karen episodes. I have been having an issue with Adobe for a month and a half to 2 months now. They cannot figure out what the problem is. And every time I call, I get somebody new and I have to explain to them what's going on. And they try to run me through the same bullshit that I've already ran through. And I'm trying to be very polite because they don't understand. And I tell them, please check the notes. I don't want to be on this fucking call for another hour and a half with you guys. This is literally, yesterday was the sixth time I called on the same fucking issue. And to get escalated to a supervisor is like, I'm like, I don't know what act of Congress needs to happen to get me to a fucking supervisor. So as I'm on the phone with the guy, I'm like, look, I am tired of talking to the same people. I need a supervisor who can fix this problem because my assistant is trying to work on projects and I have to pay her, but I can't get anything done because the fucking software is not working as it's supposed to. And I'm doing everything you're telling me to do. And every single time she comes over, we have the same problem. And I'm out the pocket, not only for this software that I'm paying through the nose for, but the fact that I'm paying her and I can't get any fucking work done. Now, does that make me sound like a Karen? Put a male in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I tempered myself because I really wanted to go off on the guy, but I didn't want to sound like a Karen, or I didn't want to sound bossy, or whatever the case is. But you put a guy in my situation, do you think that he would have given that person who had nothing to do with anything, any type of courtesy on the phone? Absolutely not. Okay. And then TikTok. I put clips from our shows up on TikTok. If you guys are on TikTok, follow us at FTOFW_podcast, and you will see the clips. One of the clips I put up there was of the NFL episode that we covered, where I talked about how NFL teams end up costing the cities more than they actually bring in. And this is numbers, guys. I don't care how you feel about what I'm telling you. These are the numbers. The amount of money that the cities outlay on the arenas and the stadiums and subsidies to these fucking billionaire owners is ridiculous. And in the end, the city ends up losing. And so I took a clip of that and put it on TikTok. And even though it was well researched, which I did. And even though I disclosed all my resources, comments came through like, unfollowing you, Karen. Okay, Karen.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. First of all, let me point out, I'm not old enough to be Karen. So fuck you right here. Second of all, by doing that, they dismissed everything that I said. Just like a guy can call a woman nasty, and that automatically negates all the education she has, all the research she might have done, everything she put into a project or anything like that. But with that one word, you can dismiss the person as a woman. And that is where the line between Karen being a white woman with a bad haircut who's racist and just trying to cause trouble and put people in their place can turn to being a sexism and misogynistic title. And that blew me away. And I hope you guys look at these resources, and I hope that you understand how deep this is, because the thing is that there's all these things in our society that are cloaked as other things, that in a 1-minute video clip or in a Karen meme that we see, that we immediately like, or we immediately laugh at, or we might say, what a bitch, or, oh, here's a Karen, or whatever the case is. But if you stop for 1 minute, and as we're doing infinite scrolling, and we're going to be talking about social media in the next couple shows, infinite scrolling, and just sort of like, haha, laughing at stuff. If you stop for 1 second and you wonder, did the person who posted about the Karen, did it come from a racist spot? I mean, obviously the lady that was in Central Park with the dog, that was a racist bitch. Okay. But if a lady's asking to talk to the manager, does she have a legitimate reason to talk to the manager? Is that something that we should dismiss? Because if you're fast to dismiss those things, are you dismissing it because you look at the woman and you assume that the Karen comes from a place of racism? Or are you looking at her thinking, yeah, fuck these bitches anyway, and she's a stupid bitch, doesn't know what she's talking about? And that fucking blew me away. And I'll tell you what, now I will not look at Karen videos or Karen memes the same ever again. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know if I'll ever laugh at them, because I don't understand the context of which they're coming from. And if you're a misogynistic asshole and you're racist, but you share the Karen meme because of the simple fact that you are misogynistic, sexist asshole. Even though you're racist, you just got a pass, but you have also satiated your misogynistic, your misogyny. So anyway, that's it. That's all I got. We're going to kick it over to Zoe to do fun music stuff. But I want you guys to really listen to this episode and I hope it makes you think. So.
Well, it made me think, that's for sure. I mean, and that was a whole load of information that I had never heard of, especially the WKKK. That's, I mean, it makes sense. I mean,
right.
Especially in that day and age, men didn't exist in a vacuum. Behind every, powerful man was, of course, a strong, equally racist, powerful woman, I guess, racist woman. But that's crazy to think of. And as regards the Karen memes, it definitely bears thinking about. Although, there's certain situations, I don't care what the context actually was and what happened before or after. There is no excuse for some of the disgusting behavior of, a middle-aged woman with a shitty haircut throwing knickers around in Target because she has to wear a fucking mask. I mean,
right.
Grow up. But yeah, absolutely. Some of the joy that is had in having in throwing these memes around is because it is a white woman losing her shit. Which and you're absolutely right. I the other day, and I think I told you about this, I was late for a meeting with you because I was stuck in a drive-through pharmacy line, and I about the most I've lost it ever with an employee, and felt like I was going to cry afterwards because I felt like I was being a Karen. But in context, I absolutely was not, because they had given me the wrong medication for my son. Now, that could have been extremely dangerous. I think I had every right to lose my shit. And I didn't until they started not being sorry and not dealing with me being calm. It was only then that I started to lose my shit. Do you know what I mean? And I did swear, and I did start to get a little bit, but I wouldn't generally do that. But if someone had been filming me and just put a little splice of that out there, I would have, I'm blonde, I'm white, I would have looked like a fucking Karen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you'd have played the end of it or some other it, you would have heard me say, I know it's not your fault, it wasn't you, but do you understand how dangerous it was for you to give me the wrong medication for my child? Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, but
right. Or if they would have just played the little clip before that said, last time I was here, you gave me the wrong medication for my child, and they would have seen the person not apologize or not. But they, again, in that context, they don't see it. And the thing with the Karen thing is that can be the worst thing for you to be called a Karen, not because of Karen, but because it negates everything else. And then it puts you in this box. So anyway.
Yeah, it's really interesting. But I will have to say that my sons take great pleasure in calling me a Karen, because my middle name is Karen, which is Keren. It's not Karen, it's Karen. It's a made-up name. My parents were hippies. I was conceived in the back of a van at a festival where Cheech and Chong were playing. You've all heard this story, but they love it. They love saying, how'd you say that, Mom? And I'm like, Karen. And they said, sounds like Karen to me. And they love calling me a Karen. So, whatever, but I'm not.
And Stormy and I had joked about her being a Karen because of the middle name. But even though now I see, even though we didn't have the maliciousness in it at all, because we were just, haha, people are saying Karen and then Karen. Now I'm like, oh, that was really, so I'm sorry about that. That was like really fucked up. Now that I understand the power of calling, any racial slur, and I'm not saying Karen's a racial slur, but any racial slur, there is so much power behind that word, and it's crazy. And I loved researching this topic. Well, actually, I didn't like to do the research because nobody wants to research it, but I love the fact that it made me think of things differently. So anyway, but yeah, no, your story is completely correct.
So what I thought I'd try and do, first of all, I thought I'd try and research and find some songs that had Karen in it. There weren't that many. So I then went on to find some songs about Karens. And then I found some famous Karens, musicians. So that's what I've got going on for you.
I like it.
So first of all, some songs with Karen in. Maybe you've heard of any of them, but I fucking haven't. So here's a few. The Beach Boys apparently had a song called Karen.
No, but that would line up with the 1960s.
Yeah, it was
reference, right?
Yeah, apparently it was a TV theme song. No idea. Maybe we can bang it on our Spotify. But and then, on the complete opposite spectrum, Miley Cyrus has a song called "Karen, Don't Be Sad," which is quite, apt. But never heard of that either.
Me either.
Then Sonic Youth had 3 different songs referencing Karen. The first one being Tunic, as in Tunic, because I know you all have trouble with my accent at times, Song for Karen. And then they had 2 other songs that reference Karen, which I think were following on. Go figure.
Right,
so there you go. And then Doves had a song called Karen. Again, I would love to have heard even one of these songs. The Go-Betweens had a song called Karen. And then there were various others, but I tried to pick artists that potentially any of us might recognize. Right. So there, I mean, Mel, if she has time, will put a Spotify list together with those Karen songs on.
I'm sure it'll be heavily rotated. I'm sure everybody will be bumping.
Oh God. In between the Christmas music that Mel has been listening to since August. Yes. But then, as I was doing my research, which was hardly as in-depth as Mel's and took me like a fraction of the time, I came upon a couple of Karen songs, which made me giggle immensely. There was, I love Stephen Colbert, and he, in his, the late show that he does now, they had a parody song using Dolly Parton's Jolene, where they had Karen, please just wear a mask, that using that, which I know we shouldn't necessarily giggle so much to now, but I think in context of the white middle-aged woman refusing to wear a mask because she couldn't breathe. I mean, there were a lot of videos back when the pandemic started of women I remember one woman sat in her car crying because, and there's no fucking context around this needed, she was sat in a car start to finish crying because she was going to have to wear a mask to go into a store, and she just couldn't breathe. I mean, it was just, anyway. So there was a Karen song where Karen, please just wear your mask, to the Dolly Parton's Jolene. And then there was various other Karen specific songs, making fun of Karens. So, but that was the main one that made me laugh. And so then, because I was getting desperate and I thought, oh God, we're going to need a little bit more humor after this.
Little did you know.
Yeah, I mean, God, that was just, it was way interesting. But anyway, I started trying to think of famous musicians called Karen. And I could only think of one off the top of my head, and it's probably the same one that you could think of. But I found, again, only one that I knew.
I can't even think of one.
Karen Carpenter.
Oh,
yeah. So she was the only one that I'd heard of when I started doing my research. Of course, I think most famous musician called Karen is Karen Carpenter, who was obviously the singer and drummer with the Carpenters, with her brother Richard. And she sadly died at the age of just 33 in 1983 from complications from anorexia. But oh my God, we should do a whole episode on the Carpenters because they were just
our Christmas episode.
Oh, yes.
Stay tuned, bitches.
Oh yeah, and maybe you can dress up as Richard. I can dress up as Karen. No, it'd probably be the other way around. You dress up as Karen. I can dress up as Richard. And yeah.
Eggnog.
Oh,
Eggnog with alcohol. We're doing it. It's happening.
well,
Okay.
I won't drink the eggnog, but I'll drink the alcohol.
Okay.
So there we go. We've got that. We've got the Christmas episode sorted out as well. Now, other Karens. I did discover another Karen. You may have heard of her because she shares a similar name to you, Karen O. She her full name, I mean, your name is Mel O, and she is her stage name, I guess, is Karen O. Her full name is Karen Lee Orzelek. She is a South Korean American based musician, songwriter, producer, and she is in the rock band the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. But she is a huge big deal, and she's really good and done a lot of good stuff, but I'd never heard of her, which shows how hip with the kids I am. She's done a bunch of really good stuff, but the thing that I found that I love the most, which I think you should put on the Spotify playlist, is she did a duet with Willie Nelson of Under Pressure. And it is just a really, it's really cool.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to find that. Spotify doesn't have some of this obscure shit. I'll try.
It was on Spotify. That's how I listened to it.
Then I have no excuse.
But it was so cool. And this chick is really cool and she's got a great voice. And anyway, so that's Karen O. So we've got Karen Carpenter, Karen O. Now we start getting desperate. Karen Elson. She is a former English supermodel and singer-songwriter. She was married to Jack White from the White Stripes. Yes. I've never heard of her, but anyway, I'm sure some of our listeners have. She is a founding member of get this, a political cabaret troupe called the Citizens Band. But apparently she does have a really, really good voice, and she does a lot of covers. And anyway, the only other Karen there were, a few others, but again, I'm trying to find something that of interest. Was there is an actual musician called Karen, just Karen, and her full name is Karen Rosenberg. And she's a Danish R&B singer. And she's a big deal over there. She's had 3 albums. Now she's more of a kind of TV star and radio star. But yeah, Karen, before Karen was
right,
Karen thing. So, but really, the most Karen is Karen Carpenter. I think I mean, that's all I could think of in my head. And that's really from my research, all the internet could think of as well. So
yeah, we're totally doing it on the Carpenters because they have the best version of, oh God, now I can't think of a Christmas song, but anyway, their Christmas album is epic. Of course, the Carpenters Christmas, and they're both on the front, side by side with their little sweaters on. Really sad how she passed away and so young. And she was an amazing drummer. Like a lot of people, her voice was amazing, but this bitch could drum. So anyway, we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. And look, if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoy our deep dives and stuff like this, share this show. I don't ask nearly enough. We need ratings. We need you to please leave us a kind word and a 5-star review if you feel it is deemed. We need you guys to spread the word of the show. And for those of you who are diehard podcast listeners, as I am, you hear this all the time. But the reason why it's asked all the time is because it's desperately needed. And, we work very hard on this show. And obviously we have listeners on Kill Pop. Shout out to them. And if you guys could go and rate and review us, that would help us immensely, and share the show. If you have feedbacks, don't stay quiet. Slide into our DMs or hit us up through our text message at 775-537-4352. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media channels at Finance is the Other F Word. Follow Lily Lou Mittens on Instagram.
Hang on.
And
She wants to make a little appearance because she doesn't often appear on the show, but she's right next to me.
there you go. So
Fast asleep.
if you're watching us on YouTube, there's Lily Lou in her little pink fluffy bed. She's adorable. Make sure you follow her because she's adorable. And like I said, follow us on social media, slide into our DMs, call us and leave us a voice message if you're a female out there and you've had examples of sexism. And then maybe we can get you on the show and build a show around that. And men, I welcome you. If you've had times where you've been expected to be XYZ because you were a male, I would love to hear from you as well. And then I would love to build a whole entire show around that. So 775-537-4352. Or you can always go to our website, financeistheotherfword.com, and you can contact either Zoe or I there. And of course, you know, my book, Finance is the Other F Word, Another F Word to Love, is available Walmart, Barnes and Noble, I can never say it right, Barnes and Noble, Target, etc. And with
Amazon.
Amazon, correct, yes. And welcome to our new countries, and please rate and review us. And with that, I think we are out this bitch.
Bye-bye. And it's Karen, not Karen.
Thank you for listening. If you like the show, please rate and review us and tell your friends.